Story 1. Sharing a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia, meanwhile completing mandatory military service and training to be a frontline soldier. I don't even want to think about it. Story 2. Antarctic penguin here. I would sit back and wait for the combatants to freeze to death from not understanding the true toll of fighting in such cold. Then I would collect any egg-like objects and attempt to hatch them. Story 3. Probably flee to the north and live in the woods or somewhere else. I'm living too close to a major military airport to feel safe here, especially with Russia having so many nuclear weapons. Story 4. You grow a pair and do your part. Running away from your livelihood and leaving others to do the dirty work so you can return later from your safe place. Who do you expect to fight for your property, family, friends, and country? Story 5. I am not fighting. I am not paying that price. My priority is myself, family, friends, and country in that order. I think many people forget what the cost of death actually is. When wars break out, 50,000 dead as if it's some number. But each of those dead or maimed individuals are people with lives just like you, with families like your own, friends like your own. It's too easy to dehumanize. Story 6. Finnish guy here. I'd simply go fight the war. All men here are required to defend the country against foreign attacks, and women have it optional. It's not like we're forced to do that, legally we are, as most of the people here actually want to fight for their country. Story 7. Arm myself, board up the house, tune into the emergency broadcast channels on radio, and await further instructions if any. Batteries are your friend. Full-scale war means the electric grid would be taken down. Do not play the hero. You're dealing with people who didn't grow up in your land. To them, you don't matter. Story 8. Sweden is a very long country, so that depends on exactly where. I would first find out whether I could be of any use to the war machine. My guess is no, but I have dual citizenship, so I would probably start looking for an apartment in Denmark, or simply move back home to my parents in the countryside. Story 9. Immediately transfer funds to a foreign bank before everything shuts down. Pack up the family gold and book a flight out. See you. I'm heading to the safety of beautiful, breezy Taiwan where my spouse's family lives. Something like this would never happen there. Story 10. The Arab Spring and Syrian civil war could have turned into a wider Sunni versus Shia conflict across multiple countries. What is being referred to at the moment is a direct war between Israel and Iran, with Lebanon, Gaza, and Yemen being multiple fronts. Thousands of missiles are being sent at population centers with full total war mobilization on both sides supporting the war effort. Story 11. I guess it depends on who is fighting and what for. Someone is invading, I would have to take up arms. A civil war? I would probably try to bunker down and wait it out. Story 12. If there is a war on American soil, something has gone terribly wrong, and there is nowhere to hide or run to. Our allies would most likely be destroyed. Story 13. Laughs in prepper at all the city dwellers thinking they are going to the woods. You will rot in your cities as trash piles up, water supply stops, and food shelves go empty in 48 hours. Story 14. I would sit back and feel safe because I keep being told on Reddit that we enjoy free healthcare because good old Uncle Sam secures my country and keeps me safe. Story 15. I am expecting you to mean civil war. In which case, everyone only has a couple of options. 1. Join a side you agree with. Don't join and wait. Mediate both. Seek refuge elsewhere. I need to know the context, because if it's something worth fighting for, I will join. If it's a stupid political play, I try to expose and mediate. If it's too dangerous and I don't see a way of mediation, nor do I stick to any side, I would leave. Story 16. Give up my medical retirement and return to service. Some things are worth fighting and dying for. The future of my nation is well worth that, be it foreign intervention or domestic usurpers. It's insane to me to see all these Reddit users with zero interest in the defense of their homes and way of life, all while the news is dominated by stories from Ukraine of a people who have only been enjoying democracy for 30 years and yet are willing to die by the hundreds of thousands to ensure their nation does not have to return to what it was forced to endure for so much of its history. Story 17. Get the kids, wife, and dog and hit the road. We have some cash on hand, and we have everyone's passports and vaccinations up to date. We would maybe try for asylum in Germany or the Netherlands if we could not escape contested territory over land. Story 18 depends on what the war is. A foreign invader? I would certainly see what I could do. A civil war? There are too many ways that can go to be able to definitively say anything, but I would likely not get involved at all depending on the parties in question. I have no reservations about my combat ability. It is limited, but there are any number of other jobs that can be accomplished that are quite important. Of note, I would not join the armed forces specifically, but I would seek out opportunities to be of use elsewhere. Rescue operations, logistics, medical care, communications, rebuilding efforts. There are many places one could contribute that do not require frontline or even reserve combat roles. Story 19. If there were a World War III to happen, Reddit users would make a rocket ship to go to Mars, make a living there just to run away from war, and introduce Reddit to aliens afterward. Story 20. The irony of this question is that it is impossible to answer. So many things that you couldn't have accounted for will happen when the war starts. All your plans and contingency plans, everything will go to ruin. Everyone will have to improvise based on the new reality. Story 21. My business is metal work. There's a good chance it will increase my workload, so hopefully I'll earn some good money while not being part of the fighting, giving me better odds of survival and leaving my country with fewer people and me with more money. A win-win in my book. Story 22. I would grab my brothers and do what I could to protect my mother and nieces. Probably use the old war defenses where we grew up because we would know it better than any advancing forces. You are pretty much helpless as a civilian, sadly. Story 23. Honestly, unless you can get out of the country early as a refugee within the first few days, then the likely choice you have as a man is to fight or die. If you're a woman, there are several other very unpleasant steps in between, but ultimately it boils down to the same thing. There isn't an option to let the invading force know you're not a threat and not participating. They'll assume you are just trying to trick them and kill you if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, then you might be captured, tortured, and then used as a human shield before being killed by your fellow countrymen or the invading force. War is not romantic. War is brutal, and you will watch your loved ones die. Story 24. I am Syrian. A very difficult war is most likely coming. I'll end up fleeing to another country or considering suicide if something happens to my family. Story 25. Try to remember my Facebook password and contact my friends who live in another country. See how they are doing. Ask about them. See if they have an extra bed, you know? Story 26. Take over the house down the street, which has cement block walls with spikes on top. I truly don't know why it was built. Pull the hurricane shutters out and then just hunker down until I run out of food or can't live with my own thoughts anymore. I might take my twin or I might not. She probably has her own plans. Story 27. Sign up. Let's get this bread. I want my family to live peacefully in freedom. I'm not going to love getting a first-person view up my ass, but I'm not going to just chill if my country gets attacked. Story 28. Block off the neighborhood and form a group with all the neighbors. There are only 3 roads in and out for over 1,000 houses, so it shouldn't be too difficult to barricade them. Story 29. Probably move back to my unremarkable old hometown that's not near any major point of interest or any tactically advantageous position. I can say that with absolute confidence without needing any skills or training in strategy. Story 30. People are saying they would run. Do you really think that in past wars people wanted to voluntarily serve in their armies? There are always volunteers in the beginning, but it's the conscripts that win wars. Story 31. Depends on who is fighting. I am perfectly happy to join up and fight for what I believe in. Unfortunately, my country doesn't exactly have many large-scale causes that I believe in, so I would probably go hide in the highlands. I am probably one of the few people in my peer group with the equipment and knowledge to sustain myself. I would likely grab a few friends who also have a desirable skill set. Story 32. Call my friends and gather my guns. Gather supplies and make supply bags in case we need to flee. Start asking around about what information I can find out so I can avoid interaction with soldiers and know where the front is or what areas are occupied. Hang out until things get intense and leave if necessary. Story 33. Laughing out loud, people in my country are far too lazy to engage in war. 2% would be fighting, and whoever wins, the rest will likely just accept it as long as they don't try to impose speed limits on the Autobahn or try to ban alcohol. Story 34. I would probably die, honestly. I am pretty big into preparing, but the odds of survival are not really high. If anybody is telling you otherwise, they are delusional. Story 35. Have you ever seen that episode of Twilight Zone where the missus is sitting on the porch of the dilapidated house? Probably that. Story 36. I would probably be dead before I get much of a chance to do anything. I live fairly close to the German Ministry of Defense, and I assume a full-scale war includes nuclear armaments. A bunch of them are likely aimed to go off so close to me that there is a high likelihood I am just obliterated. Story 37. I would probably enlist. I'd rather be an enlisted soldier who is trained than a draftee. Both might die, but I'd prefer to be there because I want to be, rather than being forced. Story 38. If a war breaks out in the United States, I let the military handle it. None of our geopolitical rivals have the logistics capability to launch a sustained invasion, and any attempted surgical strike would be dealt with quickly, and our retaliatory attack would be overwhelming. We would be fine, and the offending nation wouldn't exist after a couple of days. Story 39. You mean a civil war or an attack by a foreign power? I would stockpile food, water, and as many weapons as I could find, and then systematically take out as many of the invaders as I could. Story 40. Inside suggests a ground invasion. So yeah, I would laugh at whoever tried to take the United States of America by ground. There is a reason we do not have health care. The only way you are taking over the United States of America is at the ballot box. Story 41. I'm defending my home valley, not my country's capital. I'm not dying for a city I have no connection to. That's full of foreign criminals who would immediately run away if they could. Story 42. Make sure all of my magazines are loaded and clean my firearms. I sport shoot for fun, but I'm not a gun enthusiast. However, if it came down to protecting my family, including my dogs or an innocent person, I would use them. Story 43. I think firstly call my folks and talk to them about what we should all do, hoping they have some idea. Secondly, hope for the government to give advice and follow it, unless it seemed really obviously terrible. And thirdly, just hope that staying home would keep me safe unless the fighting was right on my doorstep, in which case probably staying home under the bed. Story 44. Full-scale war is still vague. Nowadays, full-scale would mean nuclear armament. So, it's all messed up no matter what I do. Full-scale without nuclear weapons? Are we talking about the entire United States being engaged? That's a massive conflict. Almost unimaginable given the size of the country. If that's the case, try to escape into the mountains. Full-scale military warfare, but at a realistically proportional size. Depending on where it is, I would probably go to work so I don't get fired. Story 45. I would be safe since I actually live in a remote village in the Arctic, surrounded by other military villages with one of the largest troops in the country. I hope Russia doesn't start invading Norway. They already have gotten access to troops from North Korea. Story 46. If it is a civil war, join and fight for the side that matches my morals the closest. If it is another country, make them pay in blood for every square inch they try to take. Only cowards run away. Story 47. Probably get blown up by a drone with a hand grenade. But in the event that I don't get blown up by a drone, I would proceed to use my professional experience in heavy civil construction to destroy bridges, slowing the enemy advance. Story 48. Immediately surrender. I am not dying for this terrible country, and I have seen enough drone videos on Telegram to know I do not want to be blown into pieces because I was dragging my injured buddy into an ambulance. You cannot hide from those things. And watching people commit suicide because the blast did not kill them, but they can never walk or make love to a woman again. Forget all that. Story 49. I'd probably try and run to a military safe zone where I could then hopefully be trained to be a soldier, so I can kill the sons of bitches that would dare invade my peaceful valley town. Story 50. As an American, I'll tell you that I would take up arms and defend my country. As a person, I'll tell you I'll probably hide in my basement until I'm found by friend or foe. Story 51. I'd probably try to turn my basement into a bunker. What can go wrong? I learned everything I need to know that time when I didn't read the instructions on how to install a washer. Just read directions. Story 52. Well, I am in the United States and in Texas at that. If somebody attacks Texas, I am pretty sure they won't need me to volunteer to help. Sorry, we have too many already, not taking more. So I guess I would sit at home on social media and watch the videos of Texans going after the invader. Story 53. Give the Russians the chance to experience the Vietnamese booby traps while staying mostly in my basement, assuming I'm not drafted. I'd likely attempt to live in the forest behind my house. Story 54. The thing with war is that you don't get much of a choice about what to do. You do what the situation forces you to do. If that means you get drafted and end up in a trench, that will happen. If it means you become a refugee, that will happen. Get sent to a concentration camp could happen. If that means you become just another statistic, then that's it. And your input is not really asked in any of it. There is no "what would you do?" Because you get no choices in a war, it's not up to you what you will do. Story 55. Flee. I'm not going to fight. I'm a 40-year-old man who has chronic pain and chronic illness issues. No, it's about self-preservation for me in this scenario.